Welcome to the Facebook Live session. I'm Dr. Sharon Saline, and this was started as an effort by Attitude Mag to offer support during the pandemic, and it's gone, I think, it's gone beyond that, and I think it will continue to go beyond that. It's wonderful to have you here, Dr. Sharon Saline, and please go to my website, www.drsharonsaline.com, where you enter your email and you get a free downloadable about the 5 C's of ADHD parenting. So I'd like to get started by talking a little bit about what have been some of the major challenges for people this year. And I would really help me if you could jump in on the chat and let me know what's been tough for you, what's been tough for your family. And then we can talk about some solutions for those challenges as we move into 2021. I'll say for myself, what's been tough for me has been spending so much time in front of the computer. I'm a real people person, which is why I became a psychologist, particularly a family psychologist. And so spending so much time of my day on a screen, anywhere from 8 to 10, sometimes 11 hours a day, has been a little bit dispiriting. But yet, I'm grateful because I've gotten to meet people, meet you, see my clients, and reach a number of people who I may not have been able to connect with if I were on the road. So we have Barbara, you have a 20-year-old, and Maria, Pennsylvania. So I'd love to hear what some of your challenges are. I think the second challenge for me is that I have a daughter who is in her early 20s, and she's finishing college, and she's really struggled. And I think that one of the struggles has not just been, isolation, learning online, missing, half of her junior year and then all of her senior year in what would be normal a college environment. So that's been tough for me as a parent and to help her stay motivated. Ellen shares that my son has been really challenged with university level distance learning. Maybe that will be something we'll talk about today. Um, I guess I'll start with that because, Ellen, I want to say that there have been a lot of young adults between the ages of 18 and 23 who are neurodiverse and for whom online learning does not really work. They miss the being in a classroom, the excitement, the energy of in-person learning. They are used to receiving information in that modality, and they also, I think, miss the cues that they receive from their peers, sharing, studying together, being able to follow through on assignments while working with peers or going to talk to a professor directly. It's been dispiriting and disheartening for so many of them. Rose from Kansas, you are working from home and trying to focus has been awful. I miss people. So all of us who've transitioned to working at home, and that's many, many of us, have struggled with focus because home is a place generally, not for some of you who are used to working at home, but I'll say for myself, it's where I come home to get away from work. I have my knitting and I like to hang out in my yard and do some gardening. I like to go for walks in the park nearby. I like to cook, and all of those things that are right around my house are still there. Those temptations, those activities are still there, and it's very hard to set a boundary between working and not working. I find that I work too much, or that my focus is not always great on certain days, and I just want to ditch the whole thing and bake a batch of cookies. So I think it has been difficult, particularly to bring together your work self and your home self in one environment and to have to now differentiate between those on your own. Um, Tori Potter, too much screen time, unmotivated kids, not turning in assignments, distance learning is really tough. I agree. And I think one of the challenges that we've all faced this year and we've had to learn from is that distance learning requires parent involvement. And many of us are not in teachers, we're not instructors, we weren't trained in how to foster daily learning. We can supervise some homework here and there, but we don't know how to teach, particularly teach neurodiverse learners, kids with ADHD or a learning disability or high functioning autism, in a way that their brains understand. That's why people go to graduate school. And so this has been foisted on us, and we often are struggling, and sometimes struggling without support. So I think that's been a real big burden that we've carried in this year. And I think that screen time, we've had a lot of screen time. Kids have screen time for school, then they want to have free screen time. And for us, it feels like so much. And I've talked to a lot of my friends who are clinicians and pediatricians and screen experts, and for most people, the advice is to set some limits that are generous. So in the past, where maybe it was 1 hour of free screen time a day, right now it might be 3. And for those of us who live in the cooler climates, we're inside a lot more, and so that presents its own challenges. I'm actually going to turn my heater off because I feel like I'm in the Bahamas. So 1 second, please. So sorry. um, Amanda says kids can hold it together at school, but there's constant disrespect and defiance at home. So that's a really interesting point, Amanda. So kids can hold it together at school. That's right. When school's over, they can't hold it together. And so all the stuff that they've had to hold in, all their frustration, all their anger, all their disappointment, all their, loneliness or sadness is going to come out when school is over at you. And that doesn't seem fair, but that's the way it is. And oftentimes kids do this with their parents because they feel safe enough, because you are the container. And so we have to figure out what are some appropriate ways for them to unload these sort of darker, more challenging feelings that isn't, basically pulling up a dump truck and putting their garbage on your feet. Justine says, socializing now for young people after being cut off for so long. Um, so yes, I think that a lot of young people, middle school and high schoolers in particular, have struggled with socializing safely. I know that in my town, kids are socializing unsafely. They are not following distance learning. There are kids who are going to parties, smoking pot, sharing joints or vapes, sometimes just hanging out because they're lonely, and they're together but they're on their phones, as many teens do. So we have to figure out how to help kids socialize safely this winter. And if I were going to set a goal for 2021 for families living with ADHD, that would be my primary goal. How to help your kids socialize safely this winter, because it's in North America, it can often be a long, cold, dreary winter. And if you live in an apartment, or if you're in an urban environment, or resources are challenging for you, it can be particularly difficult. Welcome, Joe. Missy, I've become attached to my phone so much more in 2020, and notice my hyper focus has been even harder to break. Making me feel like I'm not interacting, playing with my children enough. This guilt and feeling of overwhelming anxiety has been debilitating. Would love some suggestions on how to break these habits. Thank you, Melissa. Melissa, thank you so much for your honesty. I think that for many of us, our phones have become a lifeline. There's a way in which we feel isolated, and we are on our phones as a way to stay connected to anything, news, our feeds, waiting for a message to come up. And that I totally understand that, but I also think in some ways it's a false sense of connection. It's a dissatisfying sense of connection because it's ephemeral, it's not lasting. And in some ways, it's better not to check your messages every 5 minutes, because if you wait an hour or 2 hours, there'll be stuff that's actually interesting that you want to look at. So what I would encourage you to do is to set a timer on your phone for when you can check your phone. And the rest of the time, put your phone away. And if you struggle with, and turn off the sound, particularly, or just turn off the sound for alerts from various social media websites. Obviously, you need to have a text or phone calling for family members or whatever, or work or whatever. Leave that on, but try to put your phone down for an hour. Check it once an hour for 5 minutes. Because the message that your kids are getting, and I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, it's just what's true, is that you're more interested in your phone than in them. And I know that's not what's in your heart. And so what I would do is make activity times. This is a play activity period, and this is when it occurs. And when it's over, everybody can have some screen time, including me. Brianna, my son basically puts up with school because he likes music and sports. Without those things, I have no carrots to keep him going, and it's a nonstop battle. So, and also then I have Magda says she has an unmotivated high schooler. So let's put these two things together. Kids have lost a lot this year, a lot. There's no question about it. They've lost things that matter to them. And you're right. And for many kids, what holds them, what helps them through, what pulls them through are those extracurriculars. That's why they show up for school. That's why they try to pass their classes so they can play on a sports team or be in the orchestra or participate in a particular club. I think the thing that might be worthwhile finding out is there another way to play music or sports right now for kids? What actually matters to them? When we're thinking about kids who are unmotivated, we have to lean into the currency that matters to them. What matters to them? And then we need to set up an arrangement where what matters to them is earned from something they have to do. It's the have tos before the want tos. Perhaps there is a group music lesson your son could participate in. Perhaps your son wants to game, but has to earn that gaming time by getting all C's, by having some agreement about, you checking that they've turned their work in. You can set up a structure that's meaningful to your family. I think it's so easy right now because everything's been so hard to feel powerless, to feel disempowered. I don't know what to do. There's nothing to do. When in reality, there's plenty to do. I think many kids feel like screens are entitlements for them. They're entitled to game. They're entitled to stay up all night. And that's just not the case. You set the agenda about what they're entitled to do, what makes sense for them. And so I think that is important to set out. I'm working with a family right now, and the daughter is actually a pretty big gamer. She's in 7th grade. And and there's cursing and there's trying to stay up later. And so we picked one area to work on and we set up an arrangement. The area to work on is being in bed by 10, okay, and then lights out at 10:30. And so on school days. And so when that happens without screaming and yelling, this girl earns the bonus of bonus screen time the next day. If she doesn't do that, then she earns the privilege of helping out her mom with any chore of her mom's choosing. So I think this works for this family. And what is the carrot? What are some of the carrots that might work for your family? Maria says, the hardest part of this year is that my son, who is 20, who was recently diagnosed with ADHD, he homeschooled K to 12. He did see a child psychologist, and was not diagnosed early in life, just more recently. He had taken a gap year to do Civil War reenactment and figure out which way he wanted to go after this time. He is in counseling, virtual, and trying to build skills to cope. This time has been isolating because all he did was canceled. Oh, this is heartbreaking. It's his time to branch out and difficult to do that in this time. You're right. This is very difficult. And the thing that I would encourage you is to maybe work with him to figure out if there are some activities related to his interests that are still going on online. It's not the same, it's not a replacement, but it's something that could engage him. And that's important. And I think also just empathizing. This stinks. You're absolutely right to feel bad. Of course you feel bad. It's bad, you know, instead of trying to cheer him up. What I think is different than trying to cheer a child up is to say, "You're right, this is really hard. What could we do that would bring a spark of joy that we know that you are interested in? How could we enlarge in that?" Jenny says, "For my son, who's 14, too many assignments on the computer and not paper tasks. This is really challenging." I'm glad you're bringing this up, Jenny. He is an in-person learner at school. 6 different ways of submitting assignments electronically, therefore lots of missing assignments. Hard for kids with ADHD, frustrating for parents. I could not agree more. And that's why I think it's really important that you, as a parent of a child with ADHD, set up something with the school that clarifies exactly how your child is supposed to turn in assignments. It's completely unreasonable to expect a 14-year-old to turn in assignments in 16 different ways. So this is how we're going to submit the assignments. This is how it's going to work. And maybe you need to sit with him when he submits or help him figure out the process of that. But I don't think that this expectation of turning assignments in different ways is acceptable. And if your child has a 504 or IEP, then you absolutely can argue for that. And even if your child doesn't, it's still worth taking the time to do that. Meg says, lack of time to myself. How to manage distant learning, having to manage my own schedule in addition to my children's distance learning schedules and school expectations, being with the kids all day and not having carved out time to recharge, hit the reset button. And the household duties are endless, endless cooking, endless cleaning, and dishes. I hear you, Meg. I totally get that. And what I would suggest to help you is to create, a loose schedule, particularly as we're entering the holidays and there's vacation. So have a loose structure to the day, up by such and such a time. Um, breakfast, getting dressed, picking up your room, and then we're going into activity period one, maybe a little break, a snack, or maybe we do activity period one till lunch, then we have another thing we're going to do, and then a break, and then maybe the last one is that earned screen time, that or even bonus screen time that you can connect to some chores. There's no reason that you have to be doing all these chores yourself. I'm working with a family right now, and they got a chalkboard, or they took you can also take a big piece of a poster board and Post-its, and they put the chores for every day, what they are on one side, on little Post-its, each child's name, they have their own column, and then when they're finished. Each child's name has their own column, and they move the Post-it from one side to another. And this has been very helpful even for the 7-year-old. He has a few things he needs to do, and he can see what they are. He groans, he moans, but his mom can say, you need to move your Post-its before you can have your screen time. And that helps motivate him to get it done. And it also allows her to feel like I don't have to do everything, I just have to do most of everything. The second thing I want to suggest is that you set up whatever screen time your kids are going to have each day, the automatic screen time that they get at a time when you can take a break or when you need a break. Maybe you want to cook dinner. Maybe you need a half hour of rest time. Now, I know I love rest time. You could have rest time in your family plan for every day. It's 30 minutes, no screens. You read, play a game, um, uh, do a puzzle, listen to music. Those are the things that are going to happen during that 30 minutes. So you have a break to stretch, do some yoga, take a bath, whatever. I think that's really important for you to be able to do. Maybe do a Zoom class online. Who knows? Gina, as an adult, I have struggled with a lot with my entire job experience changing. 50% office and 50% customer service. I'm now 100% office work and rotate telework at the official office. Very difficult to find structure with back and forth and stay motivated without the variety. Gina, this is really a great thing to share, and thank you for doing that. We all have lost a lot of variety. I said earlier, I spend a lot of time on my screen, which is not something I'm used to. I'm used to balancing in-person therapy with some webinars, some writing, and now I'm here all the time. And I do think that it affects motivation. And I do think the lack of variety can feel kind of deadening at times. So what I would encourage you to do is similar to what I said to Meg, is to work in chunks. Have a period of time where you do a task and then set the timer so that you have a break, a 5-minute break, just to move around, to get a drink of water, um, to go to the bathroom, whatever it is that is different than what you're doing. So you'll have to implement your own variety. And that would include lunch, like bundle up and go outside. I did that the other day. It was 25 degrees. I bundled up and out I went for a walk in the park because I needed to get out of this room, of this house. So I would encourage you to try to create some variety and perhaps some variety in the tasks themselves. Could you put a group of telework, a group of calls or work together that's similar, and then shift to something that's different, similar still, still telework, but the focus and the content is slightly different. Hi, Rose. You're welcome. Glad to have you. Hi, Ellen. Are there books about ADHD people in their early adult years? That's a really great question. I have one. Hold on, I'm going to get it. It's not necessarily about ADHD, but it's called The Stressed Years of Their Lives. This is a pretty good book. I'm actually in the beginning stages of trying to write a book myself on this topic. And I'm sure I'll come back here in 2021 and say, hey, anybody want to be interviewed for my new book? But I think this is a really important topic and it's quite neglected. Hi, Doug. Welcome. My son is addicted to online video games. Hard to get him off the screen. Very frustrating. So one of the things that I would say about online screen addiction is that kids who are addicted to online is that they haven't found another way that's to stimulate themselves. So when you're online, when you're gaming online, there's a lot of dopamine that's released. It's a concrete task, it's a fixed task. You get to this level, then you get to the next level. There's a plan for you to figure out what to do. And so I think that what you're going to have to do is to reset screen expectations. If kids are not getting off, then you want to have them pay back the time. The longer that they resist you for getting off, then the longer they're going to be helping you do something. Because we have to balance low dopamine activities, which is not screen, which is not high stimulation, with those higher dopamine activities. And so right now, your son doesn't have a sense of balance. And even though he will push back on this, we have to create a sense of balance. And that means earning screen time. So you have a set amount of screen time that you get every day and when you get it. And then you have a bonus amount of screen time, which is the bulk of what you want to get. So you have, let's say he wants 4 hours a day of screen time. The first hour and a half he gets every day from 3 to 4:30. The rest he has to earn. And you tie that to other activities that he needs to do. Cursing, fighting with you, not getting off when asked, that means that he earns less bonus time for every one of those activities. Okay, thanks Annie for sharing that. Okay, all right. Thanks Maria. You're welcome, Gina. Okay, Stacy. What a great idea how to handle discipline. Thank you. We have to utilize the same issue with bedtime. When they receive bonus time, how does that work if the bedtime is set at 10? So then what you're doing is you're setting the bonus time for the next day. Okay, there's no more bonus time earned that day. How the bedtime goes on Tuesday night affects what happens on Wednesday. And I think one of the challenges is, try to make being in bed by 10, try to include with that something special. And I don't know what that is for you, but most teens want to talk to their parents or check in at night, perhaps. Younger kids might want to hear a story. In fact, teenagers might want to hear a story. Right now, it's a lonely time. Who doesn't like to hear a story before they go to bed? So see, hey, you know what? What if we read that book again together? That was such a great book. I know you're a teenager and you're all set with reading, but it'd be a fun thing to do. Cozy up in the winter. Hi, Jennifer. I'm a New Jersey girl at heart, and where I lived most of my life. Welcome. Paula, how do you have a functioning household where everyone has ADHD? It's so hard to run it when I have unmedicated ADHD. I really feel for you, Paula. What you want to do, and I know this is really hard, but you want to set up routines and a general plan for each day. Without those, it makes it very difficult for you because you've got to handle everything in your head. And that's a challenge for people with ADHD due to limits on working memory or processing speed. So to have some structure, you don't have to be rigid, like it has to be this way all the time. You can have exceptions as long as you name them as exceptions. But I think it's important that you have a general sense of structure. Use written, use use writing things down, excuse me, to help you. You can't remember everything. So you want to have lists, check off lists for your kids, things that they have to do, things that you have to do. A whiteboard could be your best friend. Paula, it is all set up and there are rewards, but I still have to monitor everything all the time. So yes, you're going to have to monitor things. I would encourage you to decide which are the main things I want to monitor and which are the things that are, priorities, but they're on they're the second level. Because you're asking a lot of yourself, and really kids can only change one thing at a time, maybe two. So pick out what those things are, what's your top level, and focus on those. Brittany BC, hi. I was diagnosed with two different types of ADD in my childhood. I'm 30 now, and I've been able to regain control of my life by knowing what was really wrong with me. I was finally able to feel like I wasn't inadequate. I'm so glad because you are not inadequate. I have a client who said to her parents, I'm not lazy. I have ADHD and anxiety. It's different. And I thought that was just so beautiful, and I was so proud of her after 6 months of therapy that she got it. Um, uh, Pages like this and people like you are what keeps us going and helps people like me through our rough days. Thank you so much for everything you do. Blessings to you. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome, Paula. Okay, I've gotten through all the questions and it's 4:28, so we have a little bit more time. So what I would like you to do is to take a minute right now and tell me one thing that you worked on for your ADHD this year that you saw a little bit of improvement. What's one thing you did this year that you're proud of? It's very important for people with ADHD to acknowledge the things that go well. And here's why. For most of your life, you've probably received negative feedback about what you could have done differently, or what you could have done better, or how you missed the mark. We have to learn how to tell ourselves when we've done a good job, when we're proud of ourselves, because otherwise we can't counteract that negative self talk. It's a huge, huge problem. In fact, the researchers at the University of Pennsylvania in the early noughts, I guess they're called, between 2000 and 2010, the Happiness Project that was directed by Dr. Martin Seligman, found that the ideal positivity ratio is 3 positives for every negative. I bet that's not what's going on in your brain. You probably, like everyone else, has 1 positive for 10 or more negatives. So I really would like you to try to think about some things that you did this year that were different and were positive. Let's see what you're saying. Routine, Paula, bravo. Abby, any comments for a newly diagnosed 63-year-old? Can you please let me know what you'd like to hear about? Alethea, giving myself some grace. I love that. I love giving myself some grace because you know what? We're all doing the best we can with the resources we have available. If we are struggling, if our kids are struggling, it's because they don't have the resources available to them. They don't know what they are. They can't access them in a way they need to in that moment. I want you to think about something. We say things to ourselves that we would never say to a third grader with a skin knee. I want you to be able to say something to yourself each day that isn't what you would that is what you would say to a third grader with a skin knee. Okay? And what I would love it if you would be willing to do is to take time before you go to bed and start a gratitude journal. And in this journal, I'm not going to ask you to say thanks for things that don't matter. What I'm going to ask you to do is gratitude for something that went well that day. Anything. It can be I wore my favorite sweater, I cooked a delicious meal, I played cards with my son and we didn't argue, I turned in a work project that I felt good about. One thing. Ideally, research has shown if you can write down 3 things, that really kind of matters because of that ratio of 3 to 1. I'd like you to consider doing something like that for yourself. Paula said, engaging with an ADHD coach despite thinking it wouldn't help. Bravo for you. Okay, I have a question from Carla. My 16-year-old daughter was diagnosed with combined ADHD at the age of 7, and it's far worse now. I believe I have it, and my late mom and sibling thought I had it. How do I find out if I do have ADHD? My lifestyle is so very disorganized, and I struggle to relax and finish anything in a single day. I struggle with anxiety and depression. Please, can you help? Hi, Carla. I'm very sorry for your struggles. I would encourage you to start by going to your doctor, your primary care provider, and asking them for a referral to a therapist or a psychiatrist who can give you a thorough diagnosis. Many primary care doctors can give you a diagnosis, but they may not take as thorough a history, or you can consider getting a psychological evaluation testing to make sure. But I think that you have a sense that it works. It sounds like your daughter has it, so and maybe your mother had it, so or it says your mom and your sibling thought you had it, so I don't know if they had it. But you want to get some information, some data. You want to get an assessment, and that's really important. I don't know where you live. If you live in the United Kingdom, you might want to check out ADDIS, ADDISS. It's a fantastic organization that has lots of resources, and the director, Andrea, is a friend of mine, I'm proud to say, and she does incredible work in creating this organization and keeping it going. You're welcome, Maria. Cara, the routine of doing the dishes every morning. Bravo, that's awesome. So you start the day with a clean sink. I love that. Uh, Anybody else want to share something that they've changed this year that they feel good about? It's always a good place to jump off for comments. Carla, you're from the UK. Okay, perfect. So I would encourage you to check out ADDISS and the work of that organization. It's a great place to start. One thing I want to talk about as we enter into this holiday vacation is how you're going to manage as a family and not spend your whole time on screens. So I just want to reiterate the importance of having a loose structure to the day and having some projects that you work on, even with your grouchy teenagers, a puzzle, cooking, um, maybe putting on some boots and walking outside in the snow, going to a beautiful place in the winter can be very restorative. Going out for a special hot chocolate that you bring into your house, or making hot chocolate. Trying to think of things trying to find some activities. Start a game of Monopoly and don't finish it for a week. Keep going and see what happens. I recently learned to play Settlers of Catan. That's a game can pretty much go for a long time as well. Abby says she started with daily meditation. So that's a great thing for you to consider. And there are some wonderful apps that will help you with daily meditation that I feel like are really manageable for people with ADHD. Because for a lot of times, if you have ADHD and someone says, oh, just sit quietly and focus on your breathing for 20 minutes, you'll be like, wah, forget it. But you could go to Headspace or you could go to Insight Timer, and they have really nice daily meditations that can be, you can set the time. You want 5 minutes, you want 10 minutes, you want 20 minutes, and that would introduce you to actually being with yourself in a way that you can tolerate and you can handle. And I think that's a really important thing a great practice to cultivate right now, particularly in this time when we can't necessarily do things that we like to do that nurture ourselves. Um, and when we can't go for a run necessarily or play soccer with our friends or go skiing. Even skiing is something that's changed this winter, so we want to be able to go inside and be quiet if that's helpful. um, let's see, Paula, ADHD friendly apps. If there's talking, I just can't do it. So most of the meditations have some talking to sort of settle you in and guide you. But I know that on Insight Timer, they have just music or drumming or sounds of nature, and you can meditate toward that. Hi, Lynn. Nice to see you. So if anyone has any more questions, I would love to answer them. I'd love to hear from you what some of the challenges you think you might be facing during this holiday break. There's also sadness for many people that they can't see or be with their families. How are you handling that? This is a great time to share some tips with the community about how you're managing to get through these next few weeks. Any ideas for that? I know that I recently completed celebrating Hanukkah, and I lit the candles several nights with my son who lives out of state. And then we had a group Hanukkah. We muted ourselves, and only one person sang the blessings. And then we hung out and we played categories, which was really fun. And it was just nice to be together as a community. Often we would get together in real life at this time, and we couldn't. So to have the opportunity to do our ritual, but also do something fun made a big difference. Another thing that's really fun to play with people online is charades. That works really well as well. Annie's posted a few meditation apps, so that's great. So if you want to take a minute and share with me any of the questions you may have about getting through the holidays with your families, living with ADHD in the next week or two, I'm happy to offer some tips for that. Paula says, teen hormones, children transitioning to high school, and kids with anxiety throws me off center. It's really hard to hold on to yourself in the presence of other people's distress. And that is absolutely what's being asked of us right now when we're all together so much. And so it's important that you have some time to yourself each day. I don't care if it's 10 minutes or if it's an hour, where you are with yourself, stretching, listening to a song, singing a song, playing a song, walking. Take some time for yourself and figure out how you're going to do that. And if you don't have any childcare, go somewhere where your kids can play and you can be present, but you could also be with yourself at the same time. Lynn says, 14-year-old son, um, you lost your 14-year-old son who would have been 21 this December. So we plan to toast him. Oh, that's lovely. I think that is wonderful. And I'm so sorry for your loss. That's heartbreaking. And honoring him in some way is great. I think that's the best thing you can do for yourself and for his memory. Anybody else have any plans or challenges about this upcoming vacation? They want to check in. How can I get through this, Dr. Sharon? I really am a little concerned about what to do. This would be a great time to ask me for some advice. Um, You're welcome, Alethea. Bless you too, and may peace be with you. So this is really a time where it's the darkest days of the year, and this is a time for us to focus on light, our light. What brings us light? Who are the little candles in our lives? And I think that given this horrendous year, it can be hard to pay attention. And I'm not talking about being a Pollyanna. I'm talking about looking around and saying, if I look back on this year, I liked this, or I saw that I made progress on that. And to help our kids do that as well, because mostly what kids are aware of is often what they don't have. And this is a time to really pay attention to what you do have. Maybe find an organization that you would like to donate to and research that together. Lynn says, my daughter visiting with her crazy cat, who is very, very lively, where the house is quiet most of the time, to howl to downtime with them when they're here for 2 weeks. I think how wonderful that she's visiting with her crazy cat. That would hopefully bring some laughter into your days, and figure out in advance what is downtime that feeds you. I think that's something that a lot of times adults, and particularly adults with ADHD, don't slow down to think about. So write a list for yourself. What's going to help me feel calmer is, and put 3 things on that. Post that on your refrigerator, on your mirror, on your car. So you look at it and you have that reminder, because in the middle of feeling stressed, you're not going to be able to pull up necessarily that thing that you have that that will help you. And so therefore you can just check your list. You can do this with your kids too, because it's likely that they will be activated when they're home at this time. Maybe get into it with each other, get into it with you. So you want to try to stave off, to prepare for some of those challenges by planning for them. Anybody else have any questions about the holidays? It's a little quiet, which means maybe you're thinking. What I would like to say is something I'm really grateful for, and a light that has been in my life this year has been you. Being able to do these Facebook Live events has been a highlight of 2020 for me. And I'm so grateful to all of you who show up with your genuine selves, and your questions and your honesty, and the courage it takes to share with us about what's going on for your life. I'm going to take one more question and then we're going to stop. Jennifer says, my son has a hard time not getting in trouble when visiting family. He gets out of his routine. Any tips about how to stimulate him when he doesn't have the trampoline? That's a really good question. So I would try to transition whatever parts of his routine that you can to the family visit. And if he can't be bouncing on his routine, what else could he do outside? Could he run around the yard? Could he play a game of tag? Could you time him while he races from one thing to another and see if he can break his times? Is there a game that you could play outside? What are all other options for him? Is there a basketball hoop? Something where he can be active as well. Thank you again for joining me in this journey. I look forward to continuing it in 2021. And I send to you blessings for a healthy and a happy holiday season. May peace be with all of you.